Welcome to Miley Media. Today I'll be sharing some stories with you of a Postmates delivery driver and the creepy and unexplainable things that's happened to him while on the job. If you haven't subscribed, do so now. Let's jump right in. Number 1. For clarity, I live in the Las Vegas, Nevada suburb of Centennial Hills on the outskirts of the city. I deliver around there, in Summerlin, and in North Las Vegas on the inner city of downtown. I work the night shift often because there's less competition for offers. The first thing that you'll notice if you hang out on the outskirts of Vegas at unconventional hours is all the beat-up cars that are sitting around empty at every dead end directly facing the desert. If you don't believe me, go to one of these roads in a residential area near or after nightfall, and you'll always see at least one of them, just sitting there with no reason. But they're never there in the daytime, and they are always facing away from the desert toward the city. Some of them I've seen idling with the lights on and no one inside the vehicle. To this day, I have never met anyone who's been able to tell me what those cars are doing there or who they belong to. One time, I was delivering McDonald's to an apartment complex and accidentally ended up on the wrong floor. A middle-aged white guy, one of those types that looks really tough without you really being able to tell why, answered the door. He took one look at me and said, "Is it done?" I thought he meant the food delivery, so I was like, "Yep, here you go." He gestured toward the burger bag. "So the proof's in there." Surprised the mess isn't leaking out. At this point, I was weirded out enough that I glanced at my phone and realized I was at the wrong address. And I promptly turned around and bolted without saying anything. I suppose I'm lucky that there were some other people walking around the apartment lot. If there weren't, I suspect I would have gotten shot before I made it to my car. Number 2. I was out in the early morning, about 1:15. Coming back from a delivery in the lots near Lone Mountain, where there are large abandoned fields of dirt which separate the gigantic McMansions. When I saw a huge blaze of light in the middle of the fields, I pulled over to see what it was, and it turned out that there was a huge SUV on fire. No one else around, just me and the burning car. I decided I'd call 911 and report it. I told the responder what was happening and the location of the lot. He sighed. "This isn't a number for prank calls, buddy. Tell your friends to knock this shit off. It's been long enough." Then he hung up. I was baffled at what this reaction was about, but I decided to keep moving. Exactly 4 months later, I'm coming back from the same delivery along the same route, and lo and behold, once again, I see a burning SUV, in the exact same position as before. Checked the time, and sure enough, it was about 1:15. I mentioned later to my mom that this happened, and she was surprised. She'd said she'd seen a van burning in that lot late at night, 10 years ago. Suffice it to say, I avoid that route at that time of night. Number 3. One Sunday afternoon, I took a large delivery from a natural smoothie place to one of the giant houses at the edge of Summerlin. For those unfamiliar with Vegas districts, this is where the really rich, connected people live. I don't really remember what the place looked like, but I know it was practically a mansion. A young woman in her early 20s opened the door. She was strikingly attractive, and she was wearing a tight-fitting white dress. I was obviously turned on a bit, but there was also something a tiny bit unsettling about her. She smiled and asked me if I could put the delivery bag in the kitchen. I followed her into the house and noticed that everything was bright, clean, and immaculately polished. The kitchen was a little ways into the house, and it adjoined the living room. In the living room, there were 2 white couches, one of them empty and the other containing 5 more women, all unbelievably beautiful and all wearing the same white dress. I set the bag on the kitchen counter and turned to the woman who'd greeted me at the door to get the all clear. I found her staring at me, smiling. She was so entrancing that I returned the stare, gazing into her eyes. "Now, you want to sit on the couch?" she said serenely. As she said it, I remember that an intensely pleasurable feeling started coursing through my body. It was from her, I sensed. Her eyes, her words, I had to follow them. After that, I don't recall anything. My next memory is driving down Charleston Boulevard several hours later. I didn't feel any different. But that night I did notice that there was an odd bruise on the back of my neck, with a tiny skin blemish I didn't have before, in the center of it. Months later, the bruise is gone, but I still have the blemish. Being that horny makes me dumb. I'm ashamed to say that I've tried to revisit the house on several occasions since, but I legitimately can't remember anything about where it was located, and I've never been able to find it again. Number 4. A few months back, around 10 p.m., I got a ping for a restaurant that was a mile from where I was, which usually signifies an order that no one else wants to take. It looked like an easy pick-up and drop-off, so I was a bit confused as to why no one wanted to take it. I take literally every order that comes my way, so of course I accepted. The pickup was at this quaint little diner on Decatur Boulevard, which looked like it had been there since the 80s, at least. I was in and out there quick. Nothing really seemed problematic or off. The drop-off was close nearby, on a street filled with ancient, sprawling one-story homes. It was a decaying house with several dead trees in the front yard. It looked like no one had taken care of it in decades. Granted, that's par of the course in some of the older districts of Vegas. But the strangest thing was that the lots on either side of it had been completely razed. There'd been houses there once. That much was clear, but not any longer. There was nothing like that anywhere else on the street that I had saw. Every other lot was filled. I had a feeling in the pit of my stomach that I shouldn't go up to the door, but the delivery had to be completed or I'd get in trouble with corporate. I went up the walk and knocked. There was no answer. I knocked again harder. No answer. I figured I'd call the number attached to the order before I just left it there. It rang a few times, then picked up. There was silence for a few seconds, and then a click, and the call ended. At this point, I was completely ready to nope out of there, so I put the food on the doorstep and turned to leave. I had made it halfway down the walk when I heard a door creaking open behind me. I turned to see who was there. There was no one. The door stood open, revealing a dark and dilapidated hallway which looked even more decrepit than the rest of the house. It extended back further than the light would allow me to see, but I had the distinct feeling that someone or something was watching me from the end of the hallway. When I made it back to my car, I was literally shaking. All I wanted to do was go far away from whatever was in that hallway. I didn't take any more orders that night, and I didn't sleep that night either. In the morning, I decided to call the number again to see if anyone would answer, and it had been disconnected. Number 5. This guy ordered Old Chicago to a house on the outskirts of town. It's 7 p.m. and getting really dark by the time I get there, and there are 0 lights on at the address. Ring the doorbell, and hear 15 really heavy thuds coming down the stairs before the door opens. The guy doesn't turn on any lights and wants me to come inside. And I'm like, nope, and try to hand him the food. He tries to guilt trip me into coming into the house. Starts saying that he has a really good cash tip and only wants to have a nice conversation with someone since he really hasn't talked to anyone in a while. He won't take the food. I look him in the eyes and tell him I was born at night, but I wasn't born yesterday night. And if he doesn't take the food, I'm leaving with it. He starts going on and on about how I'm being rude, so I get back in my car and I leave his food. After that, I always text the customer at a totally dark house before getting out of the car so that they can turn some lights on. Number 6. I delivered a 50-pack of Dunkin' Donuts Munchkins to a sketchy trailer park at 11:30 p.m. I simply couldn't find this guy's trailer, so I called him. He was really hard to understand, but I think I heard, "I'll come outside." I wait by my car, and after a few minutes I call again. He answers and says, "Turn around." I remember thinking, oh shit, this is how it's going to end. I turn around, and he's 10 feet away. He's over 7 feet tall, and a big man. I nearly jumped out of my skin. He gave me a big, cheesy grin, and I instantly knew it was all good. He was stoned as fuck, and just wanted his munchkins. I have no doubt that he ate all 50 by himself. Number 7. I had a delivery to a rear house behind a high fence with parking at the curb in the ghetto area here. I couldn't see inside the yard, only the walkway to the door, which was standing open. I carried all the food in my right hand with a 9mm in my left, safety off, at low ready. I kind of shielded it with the food bags. I called out DoorDash loudly as I approached, and a big, shirtless fat dude, plus a couple young guys in do-rags and wife-beaters came down the stairs. I moved forward to bottle them up in a stairwell behind the big guy, and held out the food at arm's length, moving my left out just enough for him to see my pistol. He took the food and said, "Man, y'all get back upstairs." I wonder why 3 guys came downstairs for 1 Belgian waffle and a side of hash browns. This was an early Saturday morning. Alright guys, that's the end of the stories for today. I appreciate you listening. And if you have any stories that you want to share with me, just comment and I will give you an email address to reach me and send your stories at. Anyway, don't forget to subscribe, and I will see you all soon.